All right, let's. Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners work session. This is scheduled for an unusual time, and I am hearing some feedback. So before I keep going, can we figure that out?
Steve, do you have your audio on maybe?
I think
No, I
everybody's
don't.
audio is off.
Mine's not.
All right,
Now it is.
sorry for the delay. Oop.
On me.
Now it's worse.
That's why I don't zoom in.
All right, is that better? Maybe it was mine. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Even though I was on mute somehow, normally I don't join with audio, so my apologies. Well, good morning, everybody. So we are having a work session that is scheduled off our normal schedule in order to conduct interviews for our Airport Advisory Board, which is newly established, and this will be the first composition of this board. It was a recommendation from our ASE vision process to create a community advisory board, and we are excited to do that today. So this process will run as follows. So we do have almost all of our commissioners here in the room. We're waiting on Greg Poshman, but we will get started without him. Every applicant will have 15 minutes to interview. I am going to go ahead and set a timer for 13 minutes so that everyone kind of has a 2-minute warning to start wrapping up. And then we will transition to the next interview. We will be conducting these interviews this morning as well as Friday morning. And then we will have a discussion Friday afternoon starting at noon at the conclusion of all of our interviews to determine if we are able to if we're prepared to appoint our members, or if we need to figure out a different process on which we would score the interviews and compare notes that way. We will be appointing 7 regular members and 2 alternate members to this board, and we are interviewing 15 people. We had quite an extensive application process. And how many applicants? 74 applicants, to which we've called down to this 15 to interview today. And we are looking forward to spending time with everybody. And so what I'll do for my board members is we'll try to give each board member an opportunity to ask a question, and I will rotate through how we start that. So we'll start with Patty on this round, and Francie on the next round, and me on the third round, and then Steve, and then Greg. And we'll keep going through that way. And so with that, I would invite Meg Haynes, who is our first applicant. Good morning, Meg. Nice to see you joining us here on Zoom. And again, I am going to start a timer here. So I'll look to my colleagues. Everybody, Greg, you're getting set up. You okay if we start?
Go right ahead. Yep.
Okay, we are going to get started. So Patty, I will turn to you.
Great. Meg, it's good to see you this morning.
Good morning.
It would have been great to have you in person, but I know the weather's not quite what we've had lately, but we're glad to see it snowing. So to be quick, I have a kind of a fundamental question. What is your priority issue for our airport? You know, your issue of greatest concern and interest?
Well, if I may, I have prepared some remarks for your question, so I will answer that by saying absolutely safety is the priority to me in all aspects. From the 15 recommendations that the Vision Committee gave, safety covers many of those recommendations, and safety is my priority.
Great, thank you very much, Meg.
All right, Francie, if you're
I
ready.
would like to hear your comments that you prepared.
Oh, would you like to hear my comments?
Yes, that would be my question. Could you read your comments?
Is there any way to get the
Yes, I
volume
will,
up
if
on
I
the-
may. It'll take a few minutes, but hopefully for efficiency, it'll cover everything why I'm interested. For years, I've participated in most of the various citizen airport processes, the master plan, EA, and so forth, and I was your designated recent Airport Vision Committee co-pilot. I have the accumulated knowledge about these reports and know the community's past and present expectations for our airport, as these are reflected in the 15 goals and recommendations. Therefore, I am particularly interested in continuing to contribute to the airport's future and am passionate about making certain that the airport's development first and foremost comprehensively addresses safety as a priority in all possible aspects. If I'm selected to become an advisory board member, I would ask questions like, how do we proactively, accurately, and consistently measure the airport's safety? Have we defined in a meaningful 1 to 5 year airport operational business plan the specific objectives and measurable action steps comprehensively addressing safety? As a Pitkin County resident, I flew out of and into the Pitkin County 100,000 miles each year for 10 consecutive years while doing my management consulting work all over the world. I am a United Airlines million miler and therefore have many airport experiences to fully understand and define the benchmarks to differentiate what quality service and excellent airport experiences are and should be. Having lived in Starwood for 15 years, overlooking the airport and often being directly under the airplane's flight patterns, I am acutely aware of and devoted to the necessity for the airport and all of its aircraft to operate under the highest environmental standards and requirements. Therefore, I am extremely interested in working with the new board and the BOCC to address all aspects of airports and aircraft's present and future impacts on the Roaring Fork Valley's environment, which is another priority. My management consulting expertise is in strategic and business planning. I have coached hundreds of Fortune 200 company executives in creating and implementing very successful corporate business plans, and I now have the time, interest, and commitment to volunteer and share my skills when appropriate. I think as John Peacock, Rich Englehart, and Cindy Hubin know, my frequent question during meetings is constantly, what is our objective and are we really addressing that now? In group meetings, my modus operandi is to facilitate discussions to stay focused on the long-term goals and short-term objectives that the group is charged with achieving. I am a proponent of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People concept to seek first to understand before being understood skills. And I think that my being publicly elected as chairperson for 9 consecutive years of the Aspen Valley Hospital Board illustrated my active listening abilities, group management, and leadership skills. As an airport advisory board member, I would consistently and carefully listen to the varied, often diverse opinions on issues, then diligently in an unbiased manner strive to find win-win solutions to our challenges, because I have a strong record of consensus building achievements. I'm almost finished, a couple more points. Having lived in Starwood subdivision for 15 years, being its HOA and water district chairperson and then executive director, I can appropriately understand and represent the airport expectations of Aspen's wealthy homeowners and tourists, and also now as a Down Valley Garfield County resident for 15 years, I have the balanced perspective to be your impartial representative of all of the entire Roaring Fork Valley's airport, very diverse constituents' expectations. I am interested in serving on the Airport Advisory Board because I think that my background and varied experiences have uniquely prepared me to be ready to assist you in implementing the ASC Vision Committee's thoughtfully defined goals and recommendations. As an airport advisory board member, I would not lobby for any particular cause, not have any vested interest, nor hidden agendas. I would persistently speak, act, and make decisions in an unbiased, fair, and objective manner. You might ask, as I have done, why I was elected to be chairman of every one of the 9 community and national boards on which I have served in the past. I've been told that my calm, objective, yet determined leadership style and skills in building consensus, creating and facilitating successful meeting agendas, respecting time and allowing all to speak, not tolerating grandstanding, and managing the work to achieve successful results are very effective. With my personal win-win philosophy, I work with others to get things done. Having gained the experience serving many hours as your co-pilot of the Airport Vision Committee, I think that I have the knowledge, commitment, and strong interest to impartially and very objectively serve on the Airport Advisory Board. If selected, I would be honored to have the opportunity to assist you, the BOCC, Rich Englehart, John Peacock, Don Bartholomew, and others in planning and leading the Pitkin County Airport toward its exceptionally important strategic future. Forgive that long answer, but I was
Well,
trying to be
Thank
efficient.
you. It was a longer answer than I could have ever asked a question for. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Francie, did you have a specific question you'd like to
No,
ask?
that was good.
Okay. All right, Greg, great. So up to me. Meg, what particular aspect of safety do you want this board to dive in on?
Well, in reviewing all the 15 recommendations, we know the report is massive and covers all kinds of areas of safety. And that's definitely tied to the environment, safety with the environment. I suppose it's hard for me to choose one particular one. And if I were on the board, I would think that we should spend time getting all on the same page and setting the priorities that we feel would be most important. Probably the airport width, it's just very hard to decide which is the most important. I think we have to review all the points that were made and then put them in priority order. So I'm not evading your answer, but I think it's difficult to decide which exactly one.
Okay, thank you. Steve, up to you.
Meg, this summer when you were filling out your application, you had moved, I think, somewhere down Valley because you were either building a new home or remodeling your home. So, where are you living in Starwood now?
No.
Or where are you living?
I feel like I'm a nomad right now. Steve, thank you for the question. As I noted, I did live 15 years in Starwood. Then we sold our home and lived in Missouri Heights for 14 years, and we sold that. And now I'm living in a rented home near the Sunlight Ski area while we are building a house in Elk Springs. So I will be in Garfield County, and that's why I was hoping that you could think about me as being your full Roaring Fork Valley resident.
Okay,
So we hope to be in our new home in May.
So I know you're familiar with the flight paths of the airplanes, and when you were managing the Starwood Homeowners Association, I think the airplane noise and activity probably affected the people living at Starwood. Would you like to comment on your feelings about that?
Yes, I guess maybe some of you might remember that I was involved in actually causing the FAA to agree to shield the beacon so the beacon wouldn't shine into Starwood, and I hope that has been grandfathered. Along with that, yes, we did hear the noise, do hear the noise. I lived on the ridge, and the airplanes would often just fly directly over our home, and we heard the noise as well as the beacon flashing. And while I was in Starwood I got to know the director of the airport and had his own special phone number that I could call to try to track planes that were being so loud. So yes, it is a pollutant.
Okay, thank you, Meg.
Yeah, hi Meg, nice to see you there. Thank you for your thorough answers. So how do you work as if you're not the mediator or running the meeting, how do you fit in? That's my first question.
I hope I fit in by listening to everyone's thoughts, expressing my thoughts, but then constantly, I guess, using my management consulting skills, trying to sift through what are the key points of each person's thought and then bringing that back so that I can help steer toward a consensus rather than just letting people go off on tangents and just carrying on about their own particular points without bringing the group to a group way of thinking toward win-win.
Okay, thank you. If I could ask another one very brief, it's just, what do you as a committee member need from us, the county, staff and commissioners, in order to succeed?
Oh, that's a great question, and I would like to ask you that also, but I would assume that how to organize the 3-year ways of being on the board. The board members would, one, the chairman or some of the board members or all would and begin by meeting with the BOCC so that the board members could have clearly in their minds your expectations and your priorities and how we would mesh those with what we were to do going forward. I think that, as you all well know, the 15 points in the 10 to 12 page recommendations, that's a massive report with so much to be accomplished. And so the priorities have to be established and mutually agreed upon before the board even begins.
Great.
Does that
Thank
answer
you.
your
2-minute
question?
warning.
Thank you.
That's our 2-minute warning. We can take 1 or 2 more questions from board members. Anyone?
I'm good. So if anybody else has a pressing question.
I could do one unless you've got one, Steve. You ready?
Go
Or
ahead.
Francie, or no? Okay, I get to ask one more. Thank you. The air travel industry is changing rapidly, and it's changing faster than I've ever perceived it, just in the last few years. So how can we optimize this airport to match the pace of the change and to stay in tune with community needs? Community wants and needs.
So how can you maximize the airport to stay in tune with the community needs as well as the aircraft currently? Is that what you're
Well,
asking?
it's really
Greg?
like optimizing for a changing environment. How do we do that?
Whew, I wish I could answer that question in one quick response. I think we first have to continue to do our research to understand the current aircraft now and their capabilities, their limitations, how they do fit in with the goals and the culture that our locals and tourists expect. And we've just got to continue to do a lot of education to understand the current airplanes, learn from the experts what they are capable of doing, what their limitations are, what the safety priorities are. So I can't answer that specifically, but I think the advisory board is definitely going to have to continue to be educated on the current environment and resources before we can decide how to go forward. I don't think we should study things to death. That's happened in the past with the Vision Committee and all the wonderful committee reports, but we just all have to be on the same page by knowing all about next gen, everything.
Thank you.
Okay, any last final comments, Meg?
No, again, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to be one of the persons to possibly participate on the board and would feel honored if I were given that opportunity, but feel very dedicated that we would all have to work in concert to go forward and decide what we're going to achieve specifically in the next few years.
All right,
Thank you.
wonderful. Thank you. So
Thanks,
nice to
Meg.
see you.
Good to see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, we're going to truncate our transition time here, and we'll bring on our next interviewee, Nikki Byrne.
Is it Melissa, do I need to ask you to let me in? Thank you.
All right, hi Nikki. So we will do the same as we did. I'll set a 13-minute timer, so we have a 2-minute warning, and we'll kind of do a round robin here on questions. And I will invite my colleague Francie to go first on this round with Nikki.
Hi, Nikki, how
Can
are
you
you?
hear me okay? Is my volume all right?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. Can you hear
All good.
us?
All
Yes.
good.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed your application a lot. It was really fun to look through. I'm wondering, with your intimate knowledge of the Aspen Airport at this time, what do you see as the primary focus that the Airport Advisory Board needs to have to move towards some progress and a new airport?
To be honest, where we're at this point, I want to commend the commissioners for taking almost this slower approach. I've been part of this process, the first iteration of the airport committee, and that was back 7-8 years ago. And where we are right now, I am a proponent that we don't need to expand the runway or widen it. I think that we can work within what we have. We do need a new terminal. There are new facilities that could definitely be updated as well, in accordance with things. However, there is not a strong rush to widen or extend the runway, to be honest.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Nikki. I'm going to dig into that a little bit. Please explain why you don't think the runway needs to be widened, and perhaps how we should argue that point to the FAA, who might disagree with us.
I know, sadly, I came off on the wrong foot there. Trying to regain my balance and where I'm at.
We can come back, and I didn't mean to throw you off.
Yeah.
It's an important question
okay.
to debate.
So I guess where my whole culmination of trauma stems from is when I was about 10 years old, I was driving back up Valley with my family from Glenwood Springs. The date was March 29th, 2001. And right in front of us at Shale Bluffs, we saw a very large fiery explosion. And I remember looking out the window as a child and seeing wreckage and flames and what turned out to be the first dead body I'd ever witnessed. And this was very traumatic for me as a young child, and having to talk through it with my parents and my mom at this point. And it was this juxtaposition of what I love the most. I grew up in the ABC, in the airport neighborhood just across from the airport in the early 90s. I remember going to the air shows. I remember smelling the jet fuel. The airport has always influenced my life. I've had a deep passion for aviation, as I included in all of my portfolio I submitted to you guys and my extensive work, even working at the airport. But this one image of this plane crash still never leaves my head at times. And I come to you guys to simply advocate what is best for our entire community. And I see it operating right now at a level which potentially could be getting it out of balance. I think we have plenty enough emplanements going on right now. We increased from 200,000 in the early 2000s to over 300,000. This is all based on the FAA data, public use. And in that short 10 years, we've seen an increase of 100,000 flights. The airport itself came about in 1946, 75 years ago. That's almost half of Aspen's own history. You subtract 75 years from 1946, you're at 1871. This is a really important point that we don't mess up with our community. And safety is the #1 issue that I believe this airport still needs to adhere by. And even if the FAA is saying that we need to widen or lengthen the runway, well, then we do that with caveats to ensure that we don't go up to the next category 3 of aircraft, because it's a slippery slope from there, I promise. I'm already noticing the trends in other mountain towns along Colorado. You have airports such as Montrose and Steamboat, which 20 years ago didn't have regularly scheduled air service to Denver. Now Southwest Airlines operates direct flights between Denver and these towns too. I see no reason why Southwest would be inclined to tap into the Roaring Fork Valley and all of these new travelers that are looking to seek out new destinations. I've traveled over 400 flights in the last 5 years myself. I've gotten to understand the different caveats and characteristics to airports around not only our country, but the world. And I've seen where it can work. In resort communities, we are privileged to have an airport so close to where we are. You look at some of our sister cities, even in Shimokapu or Chamonix, you're having to fly into Geneva or Hokkaido and drive hours away. So I think it's a privilege, not a right, that we have this airport, and we need to really ensure that all the recommendations that have been put out are carefully looked at and understood before we make any firm plans, specifically in regards to the runway. That's why I'm so passionate about baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. Let's explore all our options too with the FAA. And Aspen is a town of ideas. We have a festival dedicated to that itself. The CEO of United, Scott Kirby, came into it last year himself, and he was so impressed by this idyllic mountain paradise we live in that I believe we have the ingenuity and the resources within our own community to figure out a solution of how to still operate a 76 passenger aircraft within scope clauses, how we can still have them efficiently spaced out between taxiways and potential new developments on the airside fields. This is all doable, and we have the resources, but we have to do it right. So again, commissioners, I'm just grateful for the slow and calculated approach that you have taken in regards to this process.
Great, thank you. I think you got back on track. So great to hear your input.
Good recovery.
Steve.
So Nikki, you have worked both on the ramp for SkyWest and flown general aviation aircraft in and out of Aspen. So you kind of have a foot in both worlds of the major users of the airport.
That is correct.
That gives you a good understanding of lots of different aspects of the airport, but it also might give you a prejudice towards one method of flight over the other. So could you talk about that sort of dichotomy of the commercial versus the general aviation, which is driving some of the, the issues regarding the priority flights coming into Aspen, what type of aircraft the general aviation are bringing in, which are oftentimes getting bigger and bigger now. So could you address that general question?
Of course. I hope I don't have a prejudice myself, but perhaps we do sometimes all have unconscious biases, which could be affected. But I don't believe I have any prejudice towards general aviation or commercial aircraft coming into Aspen. When I look at the numbers, I'm a guy who bases things off data and facts. And I look at the number of departures that come in and out of Aspen Airport, and the large majority of them still are all general aviation. Commercial aviation is, I think, 30% compared to what it's like 60 to 70 on the general aviation side. And that's just also an increase with the clientele and the demographic that now lives and resides in Aspen. We're seeing a lot more and more private jets simply because that's the demographic that gets to Aspen this way, is on their private aircraft. And so I keep that in mind too when we are exploring options of widening a runway or lengthening a runway too. It's not just the larger commercial aircraft that we're going to see have the ability to come in. It is these larger privates from further away. And I guess what my core concern is, where my one bias is I have no affiliations or ties to any corporation or business in Aspen. I'm not currently employed at the airport, so I have no vested stake in seeing more flights come in or out. My own commercial enthusiasm, I fly is very rarely. I use the Aspen High School Diamond Star airplane and take it up for rent and maybe hop over to Leadville or buzz around the mountains. But at my core, I'm looking out for the community and its balance. And we're seeing increased trends in traffic, both in GA and commercial. And I believe we're hitting a peak. And when is enough enough? You know, sometimes we view this airport like a business model and its continued growth. Well, I kind of have to disagree with that in terms of the balance of where it is, and is it really sustainable to continue growth at that level? You know, I think we need to learn how to cap it and work most efficiently with what we have then, and the numbers coming in, to be honest. Otherwise, our valley won't be able to take it.
All right, thanks, Nikki.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Greg.
Yeah, okay, yeah, thanks, Nikki, appreciate the thoughtful answers. How will we define success at the end of this airport process? And I want you to talk about it in terms, you mentioned community, the importance of the community balance. What will be important to our community in 20 years regarding the airport?
I see success as having ownership and say over where our airport is in 20 years. I'd like to see the county, the future Board of County Commissioners be able to be proud of the decisions that their formers had set forth. I want to see talks and discussions between the carriers that serve our airport, between some of the vested stakes. I want there to be dialogue to make sure parties feel like they are receiving the airport they want, but also the community is feeling like that this airport redesign was done in alignment with our community characteristics and everything that we are so proud of and put forth to in the 15 recommendations earlier. It's how I view success is a safe, efficient operation that is in alignment with all of these very nuanced at times, you know, personalities that make this valley so unique. There are so many different voices here. It's hard to measure success out of just one, and it's finding success by not regretting.
That's a 2-minute warning, Nikki. You still have time.
Thank you. Yeah, success is hard to measure, but I would say success best would be measured by knowing that we made the right decisions at the end of the day.
Okay, thanks.
All right, and let's go to Patty.
Hi, Nikki. It's really nice to meet you. I don't know if I've had the honor of meeting you before, so welcome. I'm
Patty,
going
thank
to
you
just
so
kind
much.
of summarize into what my question, because you've given a lot of great points here. Out of the points that you've made, what would be your priority, your issue of most interest and concern?
I believe terminal redesign and better environmental procedures on the general aviation ramp to be honest. I would include more permanent fixed APU, auxiliary power units. Right now, they're just diesel run generators they're like idle vehicles across the ramp. There's no streamlined recycling system that exists from any of these commercial airlines, even though the flight attendants will separate recyclables and trash. At the end of the day, all of that goes into one trash bin at the airport. And to me, this is just shocking for Aspen being a, progressive airport. There are issues within itself that we can change and alter to see success. But I think the most dire need right now is a terminal improvement and general facilities along the apron itself.
Right, great, thank you. And I want you to know that when you mentioned recycling, I saw the new airport director making a note about the recycling not coming off the plane. So that may be remedied before anything else we've got going forward. So thank you very much, and it was nice to meet you again.
Likewise, thank you, Patty. I appreciate the time.
All right, Nikki, we're just about at time. Do you have just the last minute thought you want to share to wrap up?
I just want to commend you guys again on this process. I know it's not easy. I know there's a lot at stake, but I am confident with the candidates that have put forth themselves here and the community at large. And I think ultimately, at the end of the day, we will all have the airport best fitted for this community.
Great, thank you so much. Pleasure to meet you.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Have a lovely day.
You too.
You too.
So we have a little transition time. I note that our 940 is not here. Amory is supposed to interview in person. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Gosh, 2 people in, I'm already like, this is gonna be a tough go. Tough decision.
I think it's gonna be tough after we interview all of them. They're all really good candidates,
Yeah.
as were 70 other.
It just seems incredible to be in a position to say, no.
Oh, wonderful.
We don't want your
Okay.
volunteerism. You know.
Is he coming?
Okay, wonderful.
Well,
Is
we're
this
ready.
working for you guys?
Yeah, this works well. Thanks, Kelly.
Oh, yeah, I need to chat with you. Yeah. we'll do.
Hi, good morning. Come on up.
Oh, I can, try and do that real quick.
Morning.
Hey, Amory.
Nice to see you.
Good morning.
Yeah, take your time. We are running a little. We have a buffer between interviews, so.
Oh, that's so much better. Thank you so much. Yes. Yes, it's pretty aggressive lighting.
We like to see all of you.
What's that?
Your first orangutan today?
You're your 3rd interview. We've already done 2. Oh, you're our first and our only today in person, so we thank you for that.
And your first orangutan?
Definitely our
Yeah,
first
definitely the
orangutan.
first orangutan.
Probably
First
our
orangutan,
only.
is that what you, I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to figure out what that little, I noticed you changed just for, we happen to like orangutans in this room, so you're in good company.
So,
Maybe you should scoot your microphone over close to you, a few inches from you.
let's see if the red light is on. Okay, great.
It is.
All right, Amory, so we have, we have 15-minute interview slots. I've been setting a timer for 13 minutes to give people a 2-minute warning. And we kind of are doing a round robin, and so the first one Patty started, the second one Francie started, and I will take the next start off this round, and then we'll move through the group and keep doing that with the other interviews. Are you ready to start?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. All right, well, welcome. This is Amory Levins. We're so excited to have you here, and thank you for applying. As you know, we had 74 applicants, and we've called this down to 15, and we're going to select 7 regular members and 2 alternates. And so I'm wondering, you know, you have such a wealth of expertise and knowledge about so many important topics. And this board really will have a range of scope. And so I'm curious as to if you are interested and will be as interested in diving into certain topics such as you know, planning a safety training among pilots, and or looking at you know, business plans for the general aviation facility, as you might for other topics that we have laid out in our scope.
One of the attractions of this advisory board is it will get into a great many topics. And I think one of my strengths is synthesizing disparate topics and insights to ask the right questions. So yes, that's actually a positive in my mind.
All right, we'll turn it to Steve.
Hi, Amory.
Hi.
I don't get to see you too often besides when you're walking on the road. During the ASC Vision process, you participated a whole lot, even though you weren't on any of the committees, and your participation was appreciated. You put in a very strong argument for taking a step backwards and interviewing different people and you know, not rushing forward on any decisions. If you are selected to be on the Airport Advisory Committee, do you think you would still have that position and want the Airport Advisory Committee to take a step back and revisit some of the issues that you had brought up during the course of the last year?
I think that is actually the direction from the commissioners who laid out the later airside recommendations with a preface saying that they won't approve any of those things until certain things have been found out. And I would agree that those need to be found out. The industry has been in extraordinary flux in technology, in business models, in underlying assumptions. And although I don't know what's the right solution on the air side, I don't think anyone else can either until we learn more. So the main message of my 6 submissions to you all that I burdened you with is that we are at some risk of building the wrong thing by deciding before we have the right information. Basically, we're at risk of building the airside for bigger planes flying hub and spoke when it's likely instead we'll get smaller planes flying point to point and actually meeting the community's goals very much better and completely blowing past the noise and emissions goals because the technology is moving so fast. So we now have the opportunity to have people, not with all of your responsibilities, focus on what a sound decision requires. You have a lot of other things on your mind, and I think it is time for an advisory board with the skills and focus to look at those issues carefully to give you disinterested advice.
Okay, thank you.
Greg.
Great. Hi, Emery. Thank you. Thanks for that answer. You answered most of my questions with that answer. But I guess I want to drill down on the ultimate goal. How will we define success for this airport from the perspective of a member of our community? What will be important to our community, say, in 20 years with this airport?
Well, I think the community goals were well stated, and I would add to them some practical goals that were not really gone into much, if at all, in the vision process, as far as I can tell, about a sound business model. In fact, trying to make the airport a strong source of net revenue to the county and to the participants, making sure it's FAA approvable so that there's a smooth regulatory process, and that it's flexible for a future that in many ways is unknowable, although the outlines are starting to emerge through the fog. But certainly this, what Dick Arnold calls this precious little aircraft carrier in the sky at the end of what amounts to a box canyon, is so precious and so indispensable to this community. It's got to be done right, and I would hope that the outcome of a good process would both merit and command very wide public support.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Amory, again, thanks for being here. It's nice to see you. You have a lot of good points. You have definitely a lot of knowledge, experience, background. So just to, if you could put it into one point, what would be your priority issue, your issue of most interest, concern at the airport?
If I had to pick a top priority, it would be comprehensive safety upgrades going well beyond what the vision process suggested, and starting, among other things, with a major upgrade of the ground equipment. Ground avionics have moved very quickly, and my understanding from several people who know the field much better than I do is that what we have is fairly antiquated and certainly not even up with where it should be, let alone where the field is heading. I think the opportunity for mandatory general aviation pilot training is staring us in the face. These two flatland pilots who just flew themselves into a ridge didn't intend to do that. Controlled flight into terrain is a sign in good weather, too, that there's something seriously wrong with their understanding of the topography. That sort of thing shouldn't happen. We should not have almost one GA accident a year. By the way, added onto that, we have a great opportunity, I think, for a pilot training and test facility to come here. You couldn't imagine a better place to train for the kinds of conditions this airport offers, and I think it would be straightforward to get significant private investment in that and make it a great attraction, kind of turning lemons into lemonade. So the weather, the topography, all the challenges of flying here become a benefit to this community, to our safety and reputation, and to the aviation industry.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Francie. I
Hi.
don't think we've ever met in person. It's very nice to meet you. In following you over the last 30 years since I moved to the Valley, I'm well aware that you are very future-oriented. And so I really appreciate your comments about not wanting to make, build an airport that's going to not be appropriate in 20 years, that we can make the wrong choices. And so I was wondering if you would speak to the advent of electric airplanes as you talk about ground avionics. And so if we spend a whole lot of time improving our ground avionics right now, I'm assuming that would include the delivery of fuel and other things associated with internal combustion engines. So would you speak to the advent of electric airplanes a little bit?
Yeah, at several levels, because I have about 50 years of foresight in the energy business. So one of the first things that occurs to me is that the up to, 10 tankers a day, I've heard, of fuel coming in. That's gradually going to go away because the short hauls and some of the medium hauls will go electric. Short hauls pretty quickly. Medium hauls, the kinds of ranges that the commercial airplanes from here serve, that will be competing with advanced biofuels, conceivably with hydrogen. Those are more likely for transoceanic. But the airport has a lot of land that would be a very good place to make your own electricity as a revenue source. And this gives us more resilient aviation where the fuel in effect is made on site. Another level of change that we need to be conscious of, it's hard to say offhand what to do about it, but we ought to look into it, is that an early category of of electric airplanes will be vertical takeoff and landing, and they'll be almost silent. They could end up landing in different places than an airport and not needing an airport. In a city, they could land on a little mushroom-like platform or on the roof of a building. And it is, I don't think one can exclude that some commuter flights will be of that sort. But the range from here to Denver is definitely in reach in this decade. And given how long it takes to redo the airside, I think we need to be getting on with new terminal and other groundside improvements on which the Vision Committee made very many sensible suggestions in a way that can accommodate however the airside evolves. But I think the airside evolution may be quite different than what was assumed when this exercise started.
Right, yeah, changing fast. Thank you so much.
And of course, bear in mind the emissions would essentially go away because at the same time, not only is our grid clean here, but the national grid will get very much cleaner.
Thank you.
All right. You always inspire more questions for me, Emery. So when we're thinking about the airside improvements and trying to best future-proof, what things do you see that we do or not do in the near term to achieve that?
Well, I think we need to learn a great deal more about general aviation, which dominates aircraft movements, and we don't know a lot about what it contributes to noise and emissions because we don't have good baseline data measuring that, as I understand it. And indeed, the measurements we have were designed and reported in such a way that they will almost certainly need to be redone. I think getting a good handle on localization is another prerequisite to understanding the airside, because it is possible, as I understand it, for the county to regulate the sizes, types, numbers, timing, noise, and emissions of all planes landing here, including general aviation. So we wouldn't be devoting most of our analytic effort
2-minute warning.
to just commercial, which is a small fraction of the airplane movements. And I need to also understand a lot better the business model of the airport and of the FBO operator or operators, especially with the contract renewal coming up. Moving the taxiway may turn out to be a good idea, but we don't really know yet, and I think we have a lot to learn before we can know whether it's a good idea. I noticed that in our grassroots forum, there were some diverse views on that, including from Dick Arnold. And there are a number of people in the community who have run the airport or run the FBO who have not really been heard from much or at all so far, and I think would have a lot to say. So I would hope the advisory board would have some conversations with the most knowledgeable local pilots, pilot trainers, and so on, to add that dimension to the conversation. And part of what I've heard so far is that things we have long taken for granted, like head-to-head traffic, are really ripe for review and could be a very important safety opportunity.
Thank you. All right, we have time for one more question.
So, Amory, you fly a lot around the world. You've gone through lots of airports. What kind of innovative ideas have you seen other places that you would like to see considered here in Aspen?
Well, I think some of those are already underway. Electrifying ground equipment is kind of a no-brainer, just as we do at seaports. The building should be obviously thermally passive, nicely daylit, all the things that any modern building should be so that it can be net positive, and give a great experience, not just for the guests, but also for staff, who I think have pretty miserable conditions now. It is not obvious to me that there ought to be just one terminal. There is this strange thing going on at the moment where the city wants to put a lot of housing at Lumberyard, contrary to an undertaking the county gave and contrary to FAA guidelines, and I think it's very unlikely to pass muster with FAA if indeed that falls through. And the city, by the way, is aware of this issue but is not addressing it. If it falls through, then it's possible that one could do something like a departure terminal at the lumberyard and the existing site for an arrivals terminal, and separating the two is not at all out of the question. The location and height of the tower are definitely up for grabs. Visibility is now not adequate. There's been talk of virtual towers, even possibly putting something on Buttermilk so you could see what's coming from that way. And we have very little information on those options, but the flight controllers really need to see what's going on a lot better than they can now. And I also would like to understand better what degree of flexibility can be designed for the ground side and in one or more sites. Maybe, tower might go somewhere else. There might be separate arrival and departure. So there may be more siting flexibility than we've looked at so far. Underlying all of that, will there be more than one FBO? How are we doing on competition and diversity of FBO operators? There hasn't been nearly enough discussion of that. And then underlying that, there's the paradox of how do we charge the airside parking for planes. At the moment, the only way you can control traffic, which is one of the community goals, is stuff like groundside parking and making it really inconvenient to come here, which is not in community interest for people to have a bad experience. But if you charge, as we probably should and could, by area, by footprint, and by congestion, so it has a real time component, that will probably provide an incentive for drop and go, and then the revenue goes to rifle and the impacts stay here. So we need, I think, more deep and creative thinking about how to properly price the precious airside parking resource in a way that reinforces instead of contradicting important community goals.
Thank you. Thank you, Amory. We are running up at time here, and it was a pleasure seeing you.
thank you for having me.
Yeah, nice to have you in person. We appreciate that.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Amory.
Thank you.
All right. So our next interview is with Jackie Francis. She is joining us online.
Could we just have a minute for Jeff to go to the bathroom?
Well, we are going to have a break right after this interview.
Okay.
If that's scheduled, if that's okay. Okay, so Jackie, we see you there. Do you want to turn your video on and we can make sure we can hear you? Hi, good morning.
No, it's good night. It's good evening.
Yes, good evening. Well, good to see you. I'm glad you can hear us. We can hear you. So we have a 15-minute time slot for this interview. I will set a 13-minute timer just so we have a 2-minute warning. And we will kind of do a round robin of questions here. And feel free to share anything you like. And I will turn to Steve Child to kick us off.
So, hi, Jackie. Thank you for being in Glasgow to kind of represent the environmental community here from the Roaring Fork Valley. I want to get your take on perceptions that you've gotten being there at that conference about international air travel in general, what direction we should be going, how does that affect what we are doing here at the Aspen Airport? There's been a lot of publicity about the big private jets that are parked there in Glasgow that carried a lot of the participants there with a pretty high carbon footprint to get to that conference.
Yeah, there's no doubt that there's a lot of hypocrisy in the climate crisis. Yeah, for sure. But this has been, I mean, it's pretty amazing how many people here are really, really dedicated to working hard in this space. And I hope can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so, and sorry for my green, it's the best I could do. But anyway, I just came from this discussion over in the plenary meeting rooms where Pete Buttigieg and several other world leaders were talking about their new agreement, their new coalition of 20 countries that have signed on to do net zero aviation by 2050. And so to answer your question directly, Steve, this impacts funding. I think there's going to be funds available for things to help aviation get there. And they talked a lot about electrification and sustainable aviation fuels as being a big part of this. The fact that the production of sustainable aviation fuels is almost non-existent is something that's being talked about. And I think there's going to be a lot of funding flowing into this space. And that's where we could get in line for that. It's going to be happening, and it's going to be a big, intensive push around the globe.
Great, good to hear.
All right, great.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Greg.
Hey, Jackie. Let's see here. What do you think our community would look like to you if the airport could not accommodate the next generation of big airliners? What are we looking at here? And I guess this is a question I was going to ask Amory also, but I can throw it to you too. Could our community actually function without an airport? People ask us this.
I mean, that's a brilliant question, Greg. Of course we could. It would be a very different look to the community. I just had a conversation with one of the delegates here from the UK, and I said, what would happen if we turned everything off like we did in COVID to fix climate? And it's definitely going to hurt a lot of people if we were to think about things that way. And I think that's why people here are really trying to find the place, thread that needle that actually makes it work for a community and for the climate and for, the diverse interests, which is one of the things we try to do with the Vision Committee, is we try to really find a way to get these, the recommendations to work for the most amount of people. And, there's definitely some people that weren't happy with, some of the things that we recommended to the county commissioners, but we really tried to be very mindful of the best route forward and what would work the most for the majority of aspects. So to answer that question specifically, I think that not going with an airport would, it would change the economy of the town. I think we'd still have a community, but it would be, basically going back to a different time that you might remember, but I don't think so. I think it'd be even before that. And I think that making widening of the runway, it's hard to say because, as Amory probably talked about, because I didn't hear him, but the future of aviation is like looking into a crystal ball. We're not exactly positive that these smaller, shorter electric planes won't fill a huge gap. And then if we do have a lot of that, we won't need, the kind of upgrades we're talking about. But if that doesn't happen for another, 20, 30 years, then we will need it. So it's a tough question.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Patty.
Hi, Jackie. So I'm not quite sure where you are, when you're coming back, and what time it is, but you're here with us, so that's perfect, terrific. Glad to see you, as always. I think I can answer the question I'm going to ask you. I think I could answer it for you. But kind of what I'm looking for is, what is your priority issue? And I'm going to say outside of climate and environment, because I think that is always your priority issue, which we love about you. So what would you, outside of the climate change, climate action, what we need to do to protect those environmental issues, what would be your next issue of priority at our airport?
Sound, probably noise impacts, and you know what? Actually, I'm going to say the experience of the customer, because I think that that's a really important thing when I travel, which I try not to do too much, but I do travel. The experience of the customer. I don't know if it necessarily needs to be super elegant, but I think it has to be really like a good experience, and I think that that's incredibly wonderful when you travel through an airport and it's a good experience. And I know a lot of the other people will talk about things like safety, and I think that's a given. Safety is just so high on the charts. But I think that besides the environmental stuff, the customer experience, where they pull up their car, if there's a good drop zone, where they can park, and all of those aspects, how they get through security, where they can go afterwards, if there's, ability for them to wait in a place that's comfortable and, maybe even fun if they're stranded during a snowstorm. So all of that is something that I think is important.
Great. Thank you. It'll be good to have you home.
Hi, Jackie. How are you doing? I met you last year at the Jerome meeting. Remember, like a year ago or so? I wanted to ask you about GA versus commercial, because I think your answer to Patty was mostly about commercial, and both in terms of new requirements for the airplanes, but also for their experience. And I think that we lean a little towards GA because we have so much GA here. So I'm wondering if you see. I think we all know that the commercial airlines will be forced to make changes in the design of their planes, but I'm not sure that GA will. And I'm wondering what you see as our biggest needs for general aviation rather than commercial.
Well, I think the GA experience is already pretty darn good, so that's certainly to be better. I think that the GA, I know I think was 75. I think it's now like 80 or 90%. So you're right to actually focus more attention on that. I think the environmental recommendations that we made, climate recommendations that we made, are going to be hard to do if the GA doesn't cooperate or have some kind of regulatory structure where they need to kind of change what they're doing. But I also see this happening on, a national and an international level too. I see there being sustainable aviation fuel production facilities that are being talked about getting production right away. I'm going to go to an airline side session right after I talk to you guys that's with United Airlines and others, and I'm really interested to see some of the solutions that they're coming up with. But I don't mean to get away from the question about GA. I think we're going to have to do something in order to get the people that do have their private planes to be more mindful of the impact that they're creating on our community, because it's massive. And I think that, we've complained at the North 40 for years about how they sit there with their APU units on and just let them run. And that's something that they just shouldn't be able to do. So I think that, I think that the GA needs to have a lot more awareness and potentially some rules that they have to follow to make them realize the impact that they have on our community is quite big. And, we want them to obviously feel comfortable in the community and continue to give back and be a part of our community. But I think the impact has, especially during COVID, shown us how difficult this problem kind of is, and that there needs to be some solutions that we come up with.
Yes, I wonder which is a greater impact, their airplanes or their houses.
All right, thanks, Francie. So it's back to me. So Jackie, you were such an intrinsic part of the ASC Vision process, and I'm wondering now that you've had time to step away from it and kind of engage in these more global questions. Do you think we're being bold enough? Are there areas that you think we should be more aggressive and forward-thinking about?
Yeah, Kelly, I never think we're bold enough. I never think anybody's bold enough. I think that we are leading in a lot of things. And just coming from this meeting that I just came from, I was thinking about how Aspen and Pickens County are doing some really forward-thinking things. But I think we can even go further and also kind of toot our own horn a little bit more when we get these things in place. So it's an exciting time. It really is. I find this time of transition to be just fabulously interesting and exciting.
All right, Steve, back to you. Or you can pass if you don't have anything.
So I am kind of curious too about, you were a very integral part of the whole ASC Vision Committee. You showed really strong leadership and organizational abilities. You don't really have a lot to do with air travel and airports in your business and all your activities with the Keeling Curve project and whatnot. So could you just kind of describe, as an outsider from the aviation industry, how you would approach being on the airport committee? We have a lot of people who are involved. They're pilots. They fly a lot. They have a lot of intimate knowledge about how airports work. And your intimacy is more that you live across the highway from the airport. And so you're coming from a different perspective. How's that going to affect your time on the board?
Well, Steve, I travel a little bit on airplanes, but also I've been on these airport planning committees for, 20 years or however long ago Patty got me on that first one. I'm not even sure when that was. So my knowledge I've been listening to the conversations, for a long time. So no, I'm not a airport employee and I'm not a pilot, but I think that having a balance on the committee is a really good idea. And I also think that, I've learned a lot in the last few years about how to structure conversation and how to be a good listener and how to also push conversation in a way that's productive and not just go around in circles. I've been really learning a ton throughout the last, 15 years, not just about, how to work with other people and through meetings, but also about the processes and the challenges of the airport. So I am not just somebody who lives across from it. I'm somebody that's been involved in this process a long, long time, and I'm incredibly concerned about the climate and the direction of aviation in the climate puzzle. So I think that my experience and my skill sets are, really well suited for a lot of, the needs that we're looking for on this board. I mean, at least that's my guess.
Okay,
right.
thanks, Jackie.
So we have just a few more seconds left. Jackie, any other last thoughts you want for us to consider?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you guys should really consider sort of the personality balance of the committee and making it, a committee that actually does get stuff done and that doesn't just get mired down by, different like strong personalities that have a difficult time being productive. Because I think being productive is really important for this particular board.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, great to see you. We look forward to the feedback on the airline conversations you have.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm so green. They have this green light going on in here and it's getting to be dark here. So it's like, I feel like I'm an alien.
You look like an avatar or something. Yeah.
It's a good look.
Yeah. It's kind of your signature color, right?
That was maybe all the Guinness you've been drinking, Jackie. All that Guinness turned you green.
All right. Well, great to see you. Safe travels home. And thank you.
Thanks for being at COP.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, you guys.
Bye, Jackie.
All right. So we have a scheduled break. I'll say let's take about 10 minutes so we can start our 10:30 interview right on time, if that works for folks. Thank you. We'll be back in 10 minutes, Grassroots.
Hi, Greg. How are you, buddy? Good to see you.
So I have to hear about Spain.
You gotta go.
I wanted to do the community.
fits my son-in-law really well, but not me.
Okay, welcome back everyone to the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners work session on Wednesday, November 10th. We are conducting interviews for the Airport Advisory Board today. And after a brief break, we are back here in person with our next interview with Andrew Doremus. So the way we've been running these, they're about 15 minutes. I set a timer for 13 just so we have a 2-minute warning here. And we've been doing a round robin with commissioners asking questions, and you're welcome to provide any info you'd like us to consider.
Well, sure, I'm ready.
Okay. All right, and I think, Greg, we're up to you to kick us off on the round robin.
Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you.
Make sure my mic's on. I'm on. It's, I guess the question for you, we've known you practically all my life, so we don't need an introduction there and all that. I really appreciate everything you put into the committees you've been on and the work you've done in the community so far. So thank you, just off the top with that. So here's the question: How can we balance the character in our community with the needs at the airport?
Balance what again?
Balance the community character. How do you perceive our community, and how do we balance that with the changes that are coming, whether we like them or not, for travel industry and airline industry? And how will that affect your approach at the airport?
Well, let's digress back to the 70s when we first did sort of the main terminal. We were leaders with the solar panels and how we were trying to be environmentally conscious and set the airport up that way. This is a long time ago. And I see moving forward, we need to be leaders in the same kind of direction. We need to build a terminal that stands out on its own, keeps the character for ourselves, and we're working very hard on that. And as take care of our customers, our locals, but when you say keeping in line with the character, we have a very small footprint for our airport, so what we do, we have to be conscientious about how it's done, and it has to be done in a way that nobody's done it before. I mean, we have to build a terminal that's a little more maybe out-of-the-box kind of thinking. We're sort of going in that direction a little bit, which will keep the character. One of the big issues we had at one point was do we do jetways, do we not do jetways? My gut feeling was no jetways, but if the safety factor says jetways, so we maybe come to a compromise and do something totally different with jetways that you can have open, because the character of the community, or when you arrive, I mean, I'm sure you all feel the same way. When you get off the airplane, you walk down the ramp and you go, oh, I'm home. That's the character we want to instill in how we design our airport moving forward. And I think with open ideas and not agreeing to the simple solution sometimes, we can be able to keep our character that way. Does that help?
Sure. No, great to hear from you.
Okay.
Great, thanks, Greg. All right, Patty, up to you.
Andrew, I've kind of consolidated a lot of points in reading all the applications. What would be your priority issue at the airport, your issue of great interest and concern?
That's a simple question: safety. The number one priority in my mind is to keep our airport safe. We have a stigma throughout the aviation community as it's one of the most dangerous airports in the country. And I think with education, improvement, and working in those directions, we can improve the idea that our airport is unsafe. It really is not unsafe, but it has this opinion. And the Vision Committee, we worked really hard, and we realized that to get the category D3 airport that the FAA would like us to have, widening the runway to 150 feet, it just makes it so much safer. It really does. We need to educate our aviation community, and we talk about rules and regulations in that direction, and it's really, you can't tell somebody that they have to take a class to fly into this airport, but what you can do is you can work through the insurance industry and backdoor it, and if you tell them, hey, if your pilots are flying in here, we'd like them to have specific training, then the insurance company can drive the training for the pilots that come in here on the GA side. The commercial side, they all have specific training and keep it safe, but that would be my number one priority, is making our airport lose that stigma as one of the most dangerous airports around.
Thank you, and thank you for providing information on how we might be able to
Sure.
address it.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I like that idea about the insurance. So in following this as an outsider, and until I became a commissioner, I read that the recommendation from the Visioning Committee was to not move the runway because there was concern about if you moved it, it was going to be dangerous, it was going to be too close to Owl Creek and so on, and but that the experts had said it wouldn't be more dangerous, and I was wondering if you would just talk about that a little bit.
Sure. The original plan was to shift the runway center line 50 feet closer to Shale Bluffs, at the center line. And there was a group that felt that that would make it more difficult or more dangerous or in that direction. The FAA and our experts on our technical committee on the vision group really dug into this deeply, and it was not a safety issue shifting the runway because as you approach in the airplane when you're flying in near Shale Bluffs, it's a descending kind of descending ridge line towards the airport, the same as the flight path. And if you shift the flight path over, you're still above those critical points of obstruction that stick up, and they work at an upside down trapezoids is how they work the safety. So they take it and they put it and they say, oh, you're clear from all these. And, you know, I mean, I'm not an expert when it comes to the approaches or this, but the FAA and our technical committee felt there was no concern. I wanted it to shift personally because I didn't want to lose the acreage on the east side of the airport for the ramp and the parking and the cars and all that, which we're going to have to deal with because moving 25 feet wider for 7,000 feet is almost, I think it was about 8 acres, I did the math, of land that we lose because we can't move the highway, so we're squeezing it tighter. So we'll have to consider putting some space on the other side to accommodate for the land we lost. And, you know, 25 feet moving it one way or the other, we'll make it work. So, but that was the issue, and the diagrams, you don't necessarily come any closer to the peaks than you really are because of the profile when you arrive. Does that
Yes,
help your
that's
answer?
so helpful. You're very clarifying. Thank you very much.
Certainly.
All right. I'm wondering what kind of autonomy and support would you like from the county for this board?
I'd like to get it done. I think the county needs to look at, of course, we need to want to make sure we do it the environmentally correct way, and it's challenging at the airport because their airport operations historically are the same everywhere in the country. Because insurance drives it one way, operations drives it another way, and we're trying to, you know, make it a little different. And I think from the county, what I'm asking for is I'd like to see, try not to think so much about the dollars, think more about 40, 50 years from now. Like when we built the airport in the 70s, they probably weren't thinking that far out, but we need to think about how to make it work better and make some really hard decisions to get this thing moving, because if we fall behind the 8 curve on our decisions, we're gonna look like we're stagnating and we're not leaders in the small kind of airport, like making something stand for ourselves. So I look for the county to start making these decisions and get this ball going. I've been involved in this now for, oh gosh, this master plan and project for over 10 years. And I really want to see a shovel get in the ground and get the terminal going, get the runway improved, start thinking about the west side improvements, and have support from you guys in the looking out 40 years. I mean, I know that's difficult. I have a hard time doing it, but that's what I would like to see. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I guess, you know, I guess I was wondering, like, what type of resources should the county dedicate to the work of the Airport Advisory Board?
Resources. Oh, gosh, you know, I get a little frustrated with the studies, and I feel that sometimes those dollars aren't spent correctly. The airport has its own economic engine, right? So it runs pretty much on its own with the FAA support. So county support, I'd like to see it on the transportation side coming from the airport. I'd like to see some better methods of moving our customers back and forth from the airport. I mean, I'm afraid to say it, but I think you know, a train would be great from the airport to town and the airport to Snowmass. I mean, it would get so many cars off the road, and that side of the airport, the land side, is where we need the county's support and expert to tie the new thing. You know, the airport needs to be tied closely to the county when it comes to transportation. That'd be my biggest issue. Does that answer your question better?
Sure, yeah, that's helpful,
Okay.
thank you. Steve?
So Andrew, you've been involved your business running the general aviation at the Rifle Airport, and you have the company Mountain Aviation, which I'm not entirely sure what you do there, but I'm curious, are both of those still things that you're actively doing?
No, so I built and ran the charter company in the FBO and Rifle for about 12 years. And I sold it, fortunately enough, in late 2007, before the whole world changed. And then I started working with Mountain Aviation, and I was their business development director for the Western Slope, for charters and clients and buying airplanes and selling airplanes. And I flew one of their clients that was based in Eagle for those 10 years. And I've just, 2 years ago, retired from being in the commercial, as a commercial or professional pilot. So now I just fly for fun. And my main pursuit in the aviation world now is I'm the vice president of the flight academy at the high school, and I oversee the instructors and make sure that they're safe, and I'm their sounding board in that direction. So when it comes to aviation, I'm not involved professionally anymore.
Okay, so that really helps, because
I'd have a big conflict of interest.
You would
yes.
have no conflict of interest if, in looking at a second FBO or something.
No.
But you actually would be to your advantage. You have this expertise that not many other people have, and a tremendous understanding of general aviation, and being a pilot yourself, flying in and out of the airport gives you an understanding that a lot of people don't have.
It's funny you mentioned that. I looked back this morning at some of my old logbooks, and my first flight here was 1978 when I learned to fly. And since then, I've flown in every capacity in and out of the airport. I've flown as a private pilot, I've flown as a student, I've flown as a commercial pilot, I've flown as a charter pilot, and I've flown for the airlines. So it's a broad spectrum that I can bring to the table on how it works on the air side. And then on the land side, owning and operating the FBO down in Rifle, I dealt with the county commissioners and their leases and their agreements, and I dealt with the FAA when it came to building a hangar and facilities. So I feel I bring a real depth of knowledge to the group. And there's a need for somebody like Jackie. I liked her on our vision committee because she helps facilitate conversation, and I think balancing is good in that direction. But you do need a lot of technical expertise at the airport, so I hope I can help with that.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Back to you. or
Back
we
to
can
me.
go to
I could
others. We have
do
about
another
3
one.
minutes. Yeah.
Okay, Andrew, so you've been a pilot all this time. You're paying attention to what's happening in the aviation industry, no doubt. How are we going to keep up with the changes, and what changes can you anticipate happening in the way airplanes look and built, and what they run on, and how they take off and land? What's changing, and how soon is it going to change from your perspective?
It's changing very fast right now. The direction to go to electric motors and biofuels and safe aviation fuels is happening at lightning speed for the aviation industry. So I just read an article the other day. Embraer Aircraft plans on having not all, but they plan on having 4 different models of electric airplanes by 2040. Some of these will carry 9 passengers, and some are going to carry up to 60. I mean, it's very aggressive. The thing that we have to get past with is to have these more efficient airplanes.
That's a 2-minute warning.
The caveat is they need bigger wings. They don't fit in that 97-foot print. They just don't. And so that's why we got to widen the runway, not necessarily for bigger airplanes, but for more efficient, quieter airplanes. If you go back in history, we used to have Lear 24s and 25s and these old Falcons. They'd rattle the windows in the valley. They're no longer allowed here or allowed at a lot of other airports. We've moved to stage 3 airplanes, so we have relatively quiet airplanes speaking. You talked earlier about GA airplanes. The Gulfstream 650, which is not allowed to come in here, is quieter than the 550. So to say that the bigger airplanes are noisier and this and that is not necessarily completely true, but that's the direction that we have to go in if we want to be more environmentally friendly, more fuel conscientious, more noise conscientious. The industry's going in that direction, and they're trying. They really do understand that they've got to get away from the fossil fuel stuff. So battery technology is coming, and there's There's electric airplanes out there flying around right now. So it's coming fast.
Last little moment on that is they're talking about vertical takeoff and landing.
Yes.
How does that integrate?
For us, I don't think it's in our community, I don't think we'll see it. You'll see it in highly populated areas like New York and San Francisco, where the auto transportation, or Boston, where it takes 20 minutes to drive 2 miles. They'll have little vertical takeoff places, on top of buildings, and people will just go building to building. And for instance, in Dubai, you can get in an electric Uber and tell it where you want to go, and nobody's flying, and it flies you from A to B. So it's happening now.
That makes
I
me
mean,
real
it is
nervous.
crazy, right? So,
So why not here?
what?
So why not here?
Because I don't think, well, first off, you have the valley. The constraints of the mountains makes the area too difficult. You can't really operate near the airport because of the parameters of the safety and the footprint the airport has. So imagine if you wanted to try to go from Aspen to Snowmass, you'd have to go, you can't go to the wilderness, you can't go by the airport. How do you get vertically from Aspen to Snowmass? It's just not a path that is there. And that's the only place I could really see one of these little vertical takeoff and things working, is the short hop. The drive is, as we all know, it takes 5 minutes from Snowmass to Aspen, and it's an hour from Aspen to Snowmass, right? So, but it just, I don't see that being a reality for us here. It has to be a denser population.
All right, Andrew, last thoughts for us to consider.
It is, isn't it?
Well, we're at the end of our time. Is there any final words for us?
Yeah, I'm really pleased that you guys are doing this. I'm excited. They do this up in Jackson Hole. They have an airport authority board. It gives the airport manager a lot more knowledge and experience to base his decisions on, and makes his job much more efficient. And you're using, you'll have hundreds of years of aviation and experience that you'll be bringing, that your staff, the airport manager will have. And I think that'll make the airport decision process go a lot better for you. So I'm really excited that you guys are thinking about this.
Great.
Thanks,
That's
Andrew.
all I got.
Thanks,
Well,
Andrew.
nice to see you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And we'll
All right.
be,
We'll
yeah.
talk more about Spain.
Yes. All right. We'll see you guys. Thank you.
All right.
God, could you imagine living in a city with little things? It'd be like the Jetsons.
That's,
But
I
we
know,
knew
I'm
the
like, when they
Jetsons
say
were coming
50
at
years,
some
I'm
point.
like, what is it going to be like when I fly in my 90s?
Yeah.
I just saw
Yeah.
I just saw another one today that they have flown one over in wherever they're making it, a single person thing that fits in your car garage at home.
Right.
Oh my gosh,
The
really?
black one that kind of has like a little rocker like a boat. I've seen that one where the guy flew it, the journalist got in and flew it. So why couldn't you just fly that seagull?
Yeah.
Pick you up at your house,
All right,
take you
Bruce,
Red
come on
Mountain to the
up.
top of Aspen Mountain.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Bruce.
Hi,
Hi,
guys.
Bruce.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Nice to see you.
That's a hard act to follow. That was excellent.
Nah, you
That was
can
excellent.
You're in good company in this group.
You don't have to be mutually exclusive either.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if everyone's ready, I guess we could start a minute early, but I'll set a timer for 13 minutes. That'll be our 2-minute warning, and then we'll give us time to wrap up. And so I think we're back to
Me.
Patty with our round
Hi,
robin.
Bruce.
Hey, Patty.
Nice to see you again.
Always nice to see you.
Seems like I just saw you not too long ago.
Yeah, it's a good
I'm
thing.
going to start off with you with my key question about what might be your primary issue, your issue of greatest interest, concern at the airport.
Well, it's always, as a pilot, it's safety. It is safety. But it's also, a close second is the growth issue that goes on in the valley that we're all facing right now. And it's, in my opinion, reaching some critical components in which way do we want to go as a community. But as far as the airport's going, I absolutely believe it's safety. And there was lots of discussion in my group, because I was on the technical committee talking about airplanes and airspace and other things. And, a lot of times I would be not in agreement with some of the things that were talked about safety in the airspace, because the biggest issue at least we were facing, was the length of the wings and whether or not you're going to, go to Category 3 or keep it the way it is. And people would say, well, if we, the elephant in the room is always that 737. And ever since, like Andrew talked about, in the 70s, so how does that impact airspace? What is that like? And I do think that increases or lessens the safety margins. And I do think this airport is a challenging airport. I'm being on mountain rescue for all these years. I've been up and seen some really awful things. And, a lot of these things are, of course, preventable. But the more airplanes we have, the more density, it gets to be issues that we have to address. So safety is the issue, and how do we mitigate? It's tough for me because the FAA has the final say in all of this, and whereas Andrew was eloquently talking about moving the runway center line, and that maybe meets all these safety standards, it is more challenging. And everybody is, especially general aviation pilots, are not trained to those standards of the airlines and even the charter pilots.
Great, thank
So I don't
you.
know if that answers the end.
Thank you very much. So,
Well, with your experience with GA, I was wondering if you could explain what you see the biggest challenges for our GA operations are and possible solutions to some of them.
Well, that's tough because the GA is increasing so much, and again, it's as the community grows and more affluent people come. I mean, you see the airport right now is in the off season. I've never seen it so crowded in this year. So it's challenging. I mean, as far as when you talk about the land side, putting space for GA aircraft, it's challenging in the airspace itself when almost any small airplane coming in, because I'm one of the real little guys, almost automatically they have me heading over to Snowmass Village to hold, or over to the town to hold, and airspace is limited. So I don't know how you can control that any better, to be honest with you. I mean, some of the improvements they're talking about on the land side, I think, will help with parking and other, abilities to move around on the airport. But I don't know how you do put limits or controls on that. I guess one of the ways that did do that, and I understand it's very complex for me. For me, it is because, being a conservationist, I want less planes if we could, quieter planes, more fuel efficient, and as Andrew mentioned, that 650, has a lot of really great qualities. But does that, when you change and open up the airport to Category 3, do you have any control over the 737s, the bigger airplanes? And I know that's something that everyone's throwing back and forth, and if you could figure that one out, I think it'd be a no-brainer to just move forward with the Category 3 and everything else that they're talking about.
But do you see the private planes that are just so huge now? Do you see them, those owners and operators, willing to make changes to?
Do I see them willing to? I don't. God, that's sort of a loaded question, but no, I don't think that they, I think they're going to do what they want to do when they want to do it, and that's one of my fears for this community, is it has been, in my limited experience, people are who are now making this place not their second home but their home. It's I like to say sometimes that people come to this community and unfortunately they're exhaling where they came from and not inhaling where they are, and this place is all about the environment and the community and the mountains and that close-knit community. And when Andrew, I had to laugh when Andrew said he didn't want to put the vertical lifters, they wanted to be in a place where you didn't have to drive 2 miles 20 minutes. Well, that's what we got right now. I've been very much against an electric bike for myself, but I bought one because I can't get from the Airport Business Center into town, in the summer at all. And so, I mean, these are the things that we really have to address and make some hard stands. And, I'm as guilty as anybody. I voted against the train back then like an idiot, in my opinion now. But something's got to give here, because it's. I fly all over the West, and whereas Andrew mentioned Jackson Hole Airport, that's a pretty complex situation with the headliners. I fly into Haley, Sun Valley, and there's one guy there, and they've kept that airport pretty small. And I'm sure there's other challenges that I don't know about, but the guy was very helpful to me in talking to the technical committee, and that's an airport I think that does pretty well. And that's sort of a one-way in, one-way out airport, which is one of the biggest challenges we have at this airport when we talk about airspace and some of those big, heavy guys coming into the airport, and how do you get in and out of that place. So, I mean, it's this airport to me is all about the community and where we're going to go with the community. And, unfortunately, what came to mind to me, and I haven't given a lot of thought to any of this, but when you build it, they will come. I was shocked when they built that FBO, that new FBO that they got, and all of a sudden we had a whole different class of airplanes coming in, being serviced and everything else. So I'm leery of it. I'm thoughtful of it. I'm mindful of it. I want to participate in a way that brings the community, the common guy here. How am I affected by it, and how to, as a small airplane operator
Thank you.
and citizen, mostly.
Yeah, that was very thoughtful. Thank you. And I appreciate your environmental ethic. Do you think that there are things that we could and should be doing that either we aren't or aren't in the vision report to make our airport more environmentally responsible and sustainable? And
Yeah, I thought there were a lot of good suggestions in the vision report. Again, for me, it's almost you have to put some restrictions, regulations, but it's almost like there's so many the traffic itself. How do you mitigate whether you're bringing a different airplane, of course, that's going to help. How you're going to do the land side, and you're going to be environmentally conscious and have, solar and everything else. I think that's all critical. You have to do that. But then there becomes a point when there's just too many numbers. Another thing that I had took umbrage with in my committee, being a minority in my committee, was they thought that bringing bigger airplanes here was not going to increase growth. And I just not sure that that's true. I did not think it was true. And the more growth, the more people, the more pollution, and that's a concern. How do you mitigate it? It's with some of those technical aspects that they mentioned in the committee. I personally don't know anything outside of that box that I could contribute to say right now how you would want to do that, except proper planning of where you're putting cars and people and transportation. And one of the biggest factors that I think about with the airport is how do you get the people from the airport to where they're going? I used to love McBride's idea, just get a gondola and take it up from the airport up to Snowmass. But right now you bring in 100 people at a time or something. How do you get them back into town? And these are things that you have to look at far down the road into the future. Right now we're managing, but I think that's a big concern in the future.
thank you, Bruce. All right, Steve.
So thanks for applying for this new board we're creating, Bruce. Given your experience flying in the mountains so much and serving on mountain rescue, where I'm sure you've been out on, retrieval missions to small aircraft crash sites, the danger is really not so much right at the airport, but it's once the planes take off, and so many people have died in small plane crashes in the mountains of western Colorado, not just by Aspen, but all over the place. Do you have any ideas on how we could make that safer? So for general aviation, the small general aviation planes to have safety features put in, or training or something. Do you have ideas on that?
Well, I always think education is the key to everything, obviously. And we used to teach in climbing, we used to use the 5 Ps, prior planning prevents poor performance. And that last airplane, which I was heavily involved in, finding up there, they just were not thinking ahead, they weren't planning enough, and they were moving too quickly. We had talked John McBride and myself and the guy from the Atlantic Aviation had talked about producing a video of sorts that would go out as an educational component, because so many people had gone up Little Woody Creek the wrong way, or you end up in the Grizzly Creek area rather than Independence. And these are, rather relatively simple ways that get people to familiarize themselves with this. And these things change all the time. The guy was coming into town, and all of a sudden he's late. He wants to go shopping, and now he's late, and he takes off, and he disregards going, communicating with the tower or someone else, and then it gets down to basic aviation skills. I mean, mountain flying is different, and people need to understand that. And I guess you can only go so far as to getting pamphlets and other things. And I don't know why they don't, have some kind of I don't know the legalities of any of it. Andrew, said that they can do that with the charter pilots. I don't know why they can't do it with the GA pilots. At least you're coming in here, check the box with the technology we have right now. You're going to come in, and your N number is everywhere. The technology we have. They have a new thing called ADSB, where where every other airplane is. You can get on the FlightAware, and you can tell where I've been all the time, which is good and bad, I guess, But it's a way that they really do have abilities to say, I'm flying into Aspen, and, the towers, it's like maybe like a vaccination card or something, where, people that come into the restaurant say, well, have you been vaccinated? At least they verbally say yes or whatever. It makes people thoughtful and conscious that landing in this airport and the airspace around it, like you say, which is really the issue, and the weather considerations, are something that people have at least read about, looked on, and then they make their decisions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. Go ahead.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Bruce. Just looking at the way airplanes are changing and air travel's changing, do you anticipate we're going to have flights from Aspen anywhere direct? Is that kind of where things are going? Is like looking at the new, whether it's electric or biofuel or hydrogen or larger, do you have much of an understanding or perspective on connectivity? And how we build this airport could affect the connectivity of Aspen to the world?
Well, that's an interesting question. I guess, it's the altitude of this airport is really limiting, at least the technology that we have available today. So that's what's really, stopped the non-stops from the East Coast. Now, that's the discussion for the community, I think. Do people want nonstops from the East Coast, which I think, personally, will contribute to growth, and that's fine if that's what people want. They need to understand that. But I don't see it as a hub. I think it's, the limited platform we have here, to make this airplane a hub kind of system for the airlines. And again, I'm definitely not an airline kind of expert at all on this kind of stuff. I don't see that happening. And I think one of the attractions of this place is that it's hard to get to. I just think that for all these years, we've kept the integrity of this community because it's hard to get to. And, it's a quality place. And I fear that, we can lose some of that. I fear we are losing some of that by, all of a sudden the influx of new folks in the valley post-COVID and stuff like that. And so, technically, I really can't speak to that, Greg. But in my, that's my thoughts. That I don't see it being a hub kind of situation. I do see if we go Category 3 and bigger planes will come in, we're going to have non-stops coming in here for sure. And I think that's part of the equation. It's part of the challenge and the compromise, because less airplanes can mean less pollution. So it's a very something that really needs to be investigated and seeing if that trade-off is what we want.
All right, great.
Thanks for that. That answered it for me.
Well, thanks, Bruce. We are at time. Any last final thoughts?
No, I just really acknowledge you guys. I mean, in the last few times I've been in front of you, 3 times with the, just watching what you do, whether it's letting the water out of Grizzly or the environmental concerns or day-to-day stuff. And this airport really needs this kind of communication and working together. And Andrew mentioned also this town has been a leader in all kinds of innovations and forward thinking. And I really compliment you guys because that's what you're doing. And putting this board up is, and having this advisory board, I think, is critical. I can't imagine someone being in the position of running the airport without a real good cadre of people who are committed to working together, compromising, and finding solutions to what, and be forward thinking in one of the few remaining incredible communities in these states. And I'm really fortunate to fly all over the West to really cool places like Jackson or Sun Valley, but there's no place that's got the harmony and the integrity, and I always say mind and body, but influence that is Aspen, Colorado.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, we appreciate you
Nice
applying.
to see all you guys. Thank
All
you.
right,
very
Thank you.
much.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. We have a couple minutes before our next interview. All right. And hi Debbie, we're just gonna take a minute before we get started here. Greg ran to get some water and we're stretching our legs. Yep.
How much time do we actually have?
Oh, 2.5 minutes technically.
Yeah. No, we're gonna get started here. Just a few seconds.
I can't on my own reboot everything.
Is your phone still doing that?
Yeah, I did it again yesterday. No, it's I came in and talked to Mario, he helped me. Still hooked up my emails though. It completely reset again. And
goes around.
No idea why.
Everybody has this thing.
Maybe you just need a new phone.
It's less than a year old.
All right.
You want now?
No, I can do it remotely.
All right, let's bring it back here.
The pattern has been deleting some pictures. Maybe the case is pushing the buttons in some weird way.
Not holding your mouth right.
All right, guys, we have 2 more to go for today. So our next interviewee is Debbie Braun. And is everyone here in the room ready? Okay.
Yes.
So hi, Debbie. We'll make sure we can hear you. Can we hear you?
I hope so. Here
Okay.
I am in Elgibel, Colorado.
All right, wonderful. Well, we have a 15 minutes carved out. I will set a timer for 13 minutes just so we have a 2-minute warning and can get to last thoughts and everything. And we're kind of doing a round robin here that I think has worked pretty well. And so I will turn to Francie, who kicks us off on this round.
Hi Debbie, nice to meet you.
Hi, Francie. I was hoping to maybe do a little Meg. I put together 4 minutes of some comments so you could get to know me a little bit better and why I want to be on the committee. I don't know if that'll work for you or not, but let me know.
It's fine with me. That could be my question. I was going to ask about ACRA's goals in terms of the airport, but why don't you just free talk for a minute and I'll listen.
And you can still have your question. I think that'll be just
You
fine.
can still have your question. I hope I will be able to answer it. Well, hi, it's very nice to meet all of you. And as way of introduction, my name's Debbie Braun. I'm the president and CEO of the Aspen Chamber. I've been with ACRA for about 22 years now, and I just really wanted to say thank you for your time today. I represent a diverse membership of around 700 local businesses with a board of directors of 25. So I'm familiar with bylaws and reporting structure. It's my understanding this advisory board won't be involved in day-to-day airport operations. Instead, we're going to take a look at the big picture. Everything from the proposed redevelopment of the terminal building and the customer experience to environmental issues related to greenhouse gas emissions and noise. We, the committee, would advise the BOCC who's going to make the policy decisions. And also, just so you know, ACRA has contracted with the county to provide guest services at the airport baggage claim for, gosh, I want to say around 30 years. And I personally have been very participatory on numerous airport working groups. In 2012, I was a member of the Airport Master Plan Study Committee. In 2014, the Air Service Council was developed, which today looks like Fly Aspen Snowmass, and I'm a member of that. In 2015, it was the Aspen-Pitkin County Airport Input Committee that I was involved in. In 2016, that rolled to Aspen Airport County Airport Environmental Assessment. And then in 2017, we brought it all together with the Airport Environmental Assessment Community Input Committee. And then in 2019, thank you very much, it just turned into the Aspen Airport Vision Committee, and I was one of the community characters. Oh, I mean, I was on the community committee. Really, the big takeaway from my participation centered on the many vibrant, caring residents who are really willing to volunteer on local issues like the airport. I'm really grateful for those interactions. Because of this, I think I've learned to be really respectful of diverse opinions and have become skilled at building consensus from a variety of different perspectives. ACRA's vision is to create an environment for Aspen to thrive. And as the destination management organization for the Aspen community, people moving is really of great importance to us by foot, bus, auto, or air. I also want you to know that the Chamber is currently engaged in a destination management plan, and we just finished surveying 1,200 residents of Pitkin County. There was agreement that Pitkin County had limited economic diversification outside of tourism, and that preserving the small town character in an urban environment is an important value to the community. I think we heard that loud and clear. And I know and understand that actively preserving the natural environment has resulted in a highly attractive destination with a competitive advantage. So why do I want to be on this committee? Well, I actually want to be able to speak to the travel experience, the construction of a new terminal, since we really are boots on the ground for over 20 years in baggage claim. I really do want to hear more about connecting mass transit to our airport and plans for airport parking so we can create this seamless ground connectivity. I want to properly inform and communicate to local businesses and visitors on airport activities that help constituents get involved where needed. Look, I am not a consultant. I am not a scientist, engineer, environmentalist, or a pilot, and I actually live in Eagle County. But I do bring to the table an active understanding of the visitor experience, because the airport really is their first point of contact with Aspen. And I want you to understand that I know that the airport is first and foremost an asset to the residents of the Roaring Fork Valley. I also can offer that I'm able to obtain quick feedback from a broad base of business leaders. And just know that if I'm chosen, I'm going to work on behalf of you, the county commissioners, and the residents of Pitkin County if you choose me to sit on this committee. Thank you.
All right.
Well, I think you said enough to answer my question, so I think I'll move on to Kelly.
Okay.
Thanks, Franny. I appreciate it.
All right, Debbie, thank you for applying. It's nice to see you. And I guess I'm wondering, this board we're charging it to get into the weeds on some things. And I just want to assess, like, if that's really what you're signing up for. For example, if we want to ask this board, hey, can you guys put together, a training program for GA pilots, or some sort of, I don't know, weekend conference related to that issue. Or if we want to ask, what services should our GA be offering, or what kind of business operations should our general aviation, services look like? Are those kind of things that you're willing to really dive into?
So exciting, all that work. Actually, it's a lot of what I do for the chamber. There's a lot of complex issues that a board will bring to us, and I'm always charged with figuring out how we're going to move the ball forward. So I think I have the skill set and the knowledge, and I would not have applied for this committee if I didn't think I could actually contribute. But again, I go back to, I'm not a pilot, an environmentalist, an engineer. So my skill set really does bode well for organizing, planning. I can take in a lot of information. I can understand it. And then I really have, through the community character process, really took into account some different viewpoints I hadn't had before. As an example, one of the members, Kirk Hendenberger, who lives in the North 40, continued to talk about the noise and the pollution that comes from that private side into their homes. Not living there, I didn't understand that. He was really able to help articulate and show me a larger picture. So I just want you to know, I don't have all the answers. I don't know all the answers, but I'm very willing to listen and learn.
Thanks, Debbie. All right, Steve.
So Debbie, you do live in Carbondale, is that right, or near Carbondale?
Coming to you live from Elgibel. Yes, in Blue Lake.
Closer to
22
Elgibel.
years.
I know people in Elgibel have Carbondale addresses. It's kind of odd. But.
Yes.
So you would be, we can put people on the board who live outside of Pickens County, but they have to live in the Roaring Fork Valley. So that would be one of the roles I would see you filling, would be kind of representing the residents of the Roaring Fork Valley in its entirety, not necessarily just people in Pickens County. Could you speak to that issue? How would that kind of flavor your viewpoint on what you would recommend for our airport?
Well, thank you, Steve, because the truth is the airport, a lot of the users are coming out of the Roaring Fork Valley. They're the residents of the valley. I think it's really important. I think I could activate my network in Basalt, Carbondale, and Glen. I'd say I think if an issue comes up or things that are of importance, I do have a skill set to call on my fellow executives to say, what is happening in your community? How do you feel about these issues? And then we are talking frequently. So I could say that I have that all the way down to Vail through the Vail Valley Partnership with Chris Romer. So I can hear what's going on in Eagle, in the Eagle Airport, and I can bring that back to the group. So I think my skill set translates really nicely for that.
Okay, thanks for that answer.
Okay, I'm up. Hi, Debbie. Nice to see you.
Hi, Greg.
Do you have your token?
Yes, I do actually. Can I turn it in to get on the committee?
You've got to show it to the camera. So my question is, this is based on the last conversation we had with Bruce, who was just here. How would you, or are you going to be representing ACRA on this committee, or are you representing Debbie Braun? Is one question. And if it was easier to get to Aspen from anywhere in the country, would that be a blessing or a curse for the community from your perspective?
Potentially a curse. I agree that I don't necessarily think we have to make it the easiest experience, but it should be seamless. It should be doable. And so that was the answer to your second question. I already forgotten your first question.
Oh, let's see. What was my first question?
You forgot.
So would you be here as on this committee as the representative, the voice of ACRA, or are you going to be Debbie Braun? How does that work?
Yeah, no, there's many hats that we all wear inside this community. If I was chosen to be on this advisory committee, it certainly is the hat of Debbie Braun coming from the Roaring Fork Valley. I do think I have a lot of great information and knowledge behind me, but you're not, unless you designate me a chamber representative, like I think you're doing with some of the ex officios on the government side, it would be for me to represent the best interest of our residents. Is how I would look at it, Greg.
Would you recommend that we have an ex officio member from ACRA?
I personally do, because of the transportation or the destination management plan that we're working on, and transportation is such a huge key aspect to that. Not being a part of the conversation that would be going on would really be a miss for the organization. Which is also why I'm very keen to hear and be a part of what goes on at the airport.
God, thank you. If I could finish with
my
last part of my interrogation here. This is fun. So where do you want us to be in 20 years as a community? And I'm speaking about the entire valley, knowing that you're currently in Elgibel, but you're part of this entire valley-wide community. Where do you want us to be in 20 years?
Well, I want us to be a safe community with no accidents. I want us to have this beautiful gateway in a new terminal building. I would love to see these electric smaller aircraft flying in and out. And honestly, I would love to see a letter to the editor in 20 years from Woody Creek and Starwood thanking us for the hard work that we did on the committee and the community. That would be like success, I think.
Thank you for that. Thanks.
And Patty will still be on the board then, so she'll.
Yeah, right, Patty. Yeah, that's right. Send it to Patty.
No.
All right, Patty, up to you.
Yeah, okay, so Debbie, I'm gonna kind of sum up some of the, I'm just gonna let you do a really brief answer, if that's possible, for Debbie Braun. So your priority issue, your issue of greatest concern and interest at the airport would be?
It's the terminal. You know, safety is the easy answer, and I'm a scared flyer. So safety obviously is number one. But for my skill set, I think it's the terminal that would be a priority for me.
Great, thank you. And it's good to see you, Debbie.
Yeah, you too.
All right, we're reaching up to our 2-minute warning here, so if there's a burning question from board members, otherwise I can let Debbie give us parting final thoughts. The other burning.
Sure, I'll ask.
Go ahead.
So how do you see us working with, maybe with neighboring airports? You can imagine this region having a sensible way of handling incoming and outgoing tourism. Is there any way we can integrate with Eagle Vale or other places, Rifle? I don't even know, in order to make a better experience for everyone?
Yeah, there's a lot of, I know there's been a lot of information in the papers recently about the Glenwood Springs Airport, and certainly we know Rifle is down the way, along with the Eagle Airport. The chamber and I know the airport, the county, we've all been working on what we call Plan B. It's always if things are diverted, things aren't going on, there's got to be a Plan B. And certainly if we're not talking to the other airports, the other bus services, car services, we're coming up short. So yeah, I absolutely think that we should be looking at best practices from not only our neighbors, but people as far as Grand Junction. The diversion program with Grand Junction, we're working with that airport as well right now. So I think the more that we all talk to each other, it differentiates Aspen from so many other resorts, because I do believe here, people believe the rising tide lifts all the boats.
Well, thank you.
All right, great. Thanks, Debbie. We're about approaching time. Do you have any last final thoughts for our consideration?
Well, I tried to do them on the front end so we wouldn't have them on the back end. Thank you. Thank you for the consideration, but really thank you for looking out for the residents of the Valley. Much appreciated.
All right.
Thank you, Debbie.
Great. Nice to see you.
You too.
All right. Okay, folks. How's everybody doing? I see we have our last applicant here. Should we keep moving? Does anyone need a little break?
I'm up for it.
Yeah, let's-
Okay.
Going.
Michael, I invite you up to join us, please.
Sure you don't need a 19-week stretch.
I think we're okay. Well,
And you'd be the last one of every.
we have some
One,
long
two,
meetings
three,
in
four,
these
five.
chairs,
You're the-
so.
Yeah, you definitely are the seventh, and we could take me out to the ball game.
Okay. Cool.
Right, Rich?
Thanks for seeing me and
Oh, yeah.
appreciate your time and of course all your efforts with this project. It's really
Great.
exciting to be involved at the stages I have been so far.
Okay, wonderful. Gosh, is it up to me? I guess.
Yeah, it's up to you.
Well, I will just invite you to offer why you want to be on this committee for us, and what, what if you're ready to dive into the weeds, and what kind of support you hope the county gives to this board.
Sure. I'll go a little shorter than Debbie. My name is Michael Solons. I've been in the Valley for about 11 years. I'm a resident of Starwood. Right when I moved into Starwood, I came on the board. I served as on the board for 10 years, chair of 6, and we have our development application committee, so I wore many hats there. I'm a father, a husband, a grandfather now,
Ooh, congrats.
and an uncle. I have 2 kids in the East Coast and 1 in Denver. I've also served on numerous boards throughout my professional and civic volunteer career, planning boards, professional boards. So I have a unique experience in leadership. I also have a background in real estate development, and while I don't develop here in the Valley, and I don't develop anymore, it brings a unique perspective as to the process that the county and this committee is going to go through. Lastly, I have been, up until about 2 years ago, a line pilot with SkyWest Airlines. I'm going to qualify that and say I do not represent SkyWest. In fact, my job would be in jeopardy if I probably said that, as you know, SkyWest has their own public relations people. But being a line pilot and flying into Eagle airports and Aspen airports gives me a very unique perspective as to the operations behind the scene that I don't think is available otherwise. So I think that unique combination it makes me well suited for this type of work with the committee. I participated in the environmental committee and the AC Vision technical review committee. In fact, a lot of the handwriting in the technical report originated with Bill Tomsich and I, and we took all of the data and we analyzed it and we studied it. We spent many hours kind of going back and forth with it to what the result is you see in your report today, and I worked hand in hand with John Peacock, your county executive. So I have the time available. I'm really not doing full-time anything other than some real estate investing in other areas. But I'm very much interested in seeing this project succeed, and I have the time and availability to do it, and I'd very much like to be involved.
Great, thank you, Michael. All right, Steve, to you.
Okay, well, welcome. I was impressed with your resume that, the application from, applying to be on this committee. I see that you have 2 attributes that would be beneficial for this committee. One, that you're a commercial pilot who's flown in and out of Aspen many times. The other, that you are a resident of Starwood and look down upon the airport, and you have to deal, as do any nearby residents, with noise, lights, commotion, whatever kind of things.
I see it every day.
So
from
could
the
you
back.
speak to both of those things, your perception? It's they're kind of the opposite poles of
Right.
how you might view the developments at the airport.
I think I initially got involved on the Starwood board, and Meg Haynes, who I believe is also an applicant. We both sat on the environmental committee. I actually see the runway from my house every single day if I walk out my backyard. Being a pilot, probably tolerant of the noise, but the noise doesn't bother me because I'm a pilot, I guess. But as I look down, I reflect and I understand what goes on. I've been into the bowels of the airport. I know what happens when it starts snowing and you have 5 groups of passengers literally falling over each other in that terminal. And I think it's a shame that we're a world-class resort, but I think we can do so much better. And so when I look back at the airport, I see this is a project that I would love to be involved in, and I know that we can make it better for our community. We have the resources. I think we could probably get the FAA funding involved. So from my perspective, it's something I look at as something that could be improved in the future. And what was the first part of the question about Starwood, or
Well,
was it a 2-part question?
well, a resident of Starwood
Yeah.
and then being a commercial pilot also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I certainly can represent the Starwood. I'm not currently on the board. We put term limits on, and I served 10 years, and I agreed to step down. But I certainly can be a liaison for Starwood and be very effective there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Great, Michael, thanks. What do you think the biggest conflicts are going to be, or what have you perceived? And give us some insight on how you would focus the conflicts on a committee. And I'm going to frame it in we have a community that's very concerned about growth and change, because sometimes that represents that certainly there's a lot of fear behind what could possibly go wrong if we make a change at the airport. What can you share with us about that? And what's your perspective on what makes this place special, and how do we maintain it or improve it?
It's a good question. I'll deal with the conflicts side. I think there's perception that if you widen the runway and expand the terminal, you therefore have higher traffic. And when I looked at the data, that's not what I see. I see we have approximately 20,000 pillows in the Aspen area. If you don't increase pillows, if people come here and there's not more pillows, they're not going to stay, they're going to leave. In other words, you have to have a place for them to stay, and we're not rampantly developing much here. So I don't see the rapid increase of Aspen traffic here just by widening the runway and fixing the terminal. And that's based on the data that's been presented in all the AC Vision Committee materials. So I think it becomes a matter of educating our community about what that really entails. There was a comment on a technical review committee that if we make the runway wider, we're going to have aircraft coming from all over the world. Well, guess what? They're already coming from all over the world. And there's only 2 corporate airplanes that can't land here, the Gulfstream 650 and I think the Challenger, because of their wingspan. But basically, we're a world-class community whether we like it or not. So to answer your question about conflicts, I don't see widening the runway and expanding the terminal as necessarily tied into higher volume of people coming to Aspen.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to bring up my big question.
Okay.
Out of all the issues that you've obviously been involved with the airport, and in your own personal opinion, what is the issue of greatest priority or concern or interest to you?
Well, I had the benefit of listening to Debbie, so I can echo. But I'll tell you why safety and the terminal are important. This airport is safe, regardless of some of the rhetoric that you may see. The way the airlines operate here is as safe as it can be, and I can tell you because I've been through the training, not just on a basic level, but a more advanced level, and they do that for this and Eagle airports. I don't see the widening of the runway as in any way compromising safety, but safety still should be a priority. And one of my ideas when we were bantering this about in the technical review committee on the GA side was some type of communication outreach, because if you look at the last 20 years, the accidents have been more on the GA side, not on the commercial side. So I see that as part of our committee's task, is to help educate the general aviation side about the inherent risks of flying in here. And again, I don't say risk as being not safe. I just meant to operators who don't come in here regularly. I think there could be an educational component to helping that. And the other side is the terminal. I really do think we can do better and make it safer for, people tripping all over each other in the terminal that's where your biggest risk of getting hurt in this airport is. And I really do think we could do better by making a nice terminal. I wouldn't say Eagle is the quintessential example, but it's nicer, it's bigger, it's spacious. I think we can really design a super building for the community and help improve
That's
the
great. I
airport
haven't heard
experience.
terminal safety for people tripping each over that, but that's something we should
I
probably.
guarantee you're more likely to get hurt there
Yeah.
than in one of our airplanes.
We should have been thinking about a long time ago, but thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm going to respond a little bit to something that you said, Michael, about the number of pillows that we provide.
The number of?
Pillows. In
Okay.
other words, if we don't keep building more hotels, then we won't keep bringing in more people. So what do you see as the possibility of, instead of responding to growth and making the airport bigger and allowing for more accommodations for the growth of general aviation, what do you see as the possibility of reducing the size of the airport? So in other words, we're going to restrict the supply, like you mentioned with pillows, rather than the demand pushing the supply. So could you see that as a possibility at all, so that we don't keep providing more and more services for GA and runways to accommodate growth and all of that? So what if we just decide to shrink it all instead?
Well, when you say shrink it all, you mean shrink the runway?
No, not shrink commercial operations,
Okay.
just general aviation.
Oh, general aviation?
Access.
That's a sticky wicket. There is still, when you look at general aviation airports across the country, they are economic engines. So there is an economic engine that's driven by general aviation. So I wouldn't necessarily say to shrink it. What I'd like to see is, we have a lot of drop and goes, and that's bad environmentally. It's bad noise-wise. It has APUs running. A lot of corporate airplanes will come, and because they can't have a hangar, they'll drop their passengers, go to rifle. You've just doubled your enplanements, which adds to the noise, to the pollution. So I think there's got to be a solution, whether hangars or whether it be with carbon offsets, whatever the technique is to get the general aviation not reduce the number of passengers, but reduce those drop and goes, because that's a big impact on the environment. I mean, I see airplanes and 10 minutes later they're the same ones going out. But as far as restricting it, I don't know that I'd be in favor of restricting that, because that is an economic driver. I do think you can do it by restricting the amount of space, and that's already the case now. I mean, Christmas week, they actually had to close operations for a while because they had to close ramp enplanements because there was too many aircraft on the ramp themselves.
So in order to restrict stop and goes, then we actually do have to provide more services or more hangar space.
More hangar space, or maybe there's a disincentive with the way landing fees. I'm not sure how to restrict it, because again, I have limited corporate experience. I have flown corporate. But I'm not that familiar with the FBO operations to say, let's charge another $1 a gallon of fuel and they won't come here, and maybe they'll just go to rifle and drive their car. But that has unintended consequences as well, because
Right.
then you have more vehicles on the road.
Right.
So, but I do believe if you can disincentivize the drop and goes, that's one way to help reduce some of the noise and the pollution. It's just an environmental disaster doing double the amount of
Right,
trips coming
right.
in and out.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
did I
Great. Thank
answer
you.
your Did I answer your question?
Well, I was just wondering, when you mentioned that about not providing more beds in Aspen, and therefore we won't be bringing in more people, I was wondering if we'd considered restrictions at the airport in order to help control growth. And,
If you restrict it in the airport and you have the unintended consequences of having it more expensive for the common traveler to come in, then you're hurting your regular skier traffic, the people who come in on commercial airplanes, if you restrict enplanements or landings or even gates. I still think if you build that terminal to a nice size and you expand the runway to comply with the design standards, you're still not gonna see this rapid influx of more people traffic into Aspen. That's
Okay,
my
good to
opinion,
know.
based on the data.
A really good question. If you don't have a place to park, you can't fly in here.
Yeah. Or you drop and go.
But it's what makes us a
Those are
world-class
the worst.
resort, the fact that you can fly in here and almost walk to the first ski hill, right? That's what makes us so attractive. It's different than Eagle. You fly into Eagle, you've got a 40-minute drive to the mountain.
Yeah,
So,
interesting.
All right, we're at about our minute and a half warning. Any other questions for Michael? Steve, go ahead.
Well, my question is, if you could fly whatever commercial jet into Aspen that you could pick from sort of the fleet and the projected fleet, what plane would you think would be the ideal one for the commercial aircraft flying into Aspen?
from what we've looked at, well, right now, today, the CRJ 700 is the only game in town. It's a fun airplane to fly, but we know it's not gonna be around forever, whether it's gonna be 1 year, 2 years, 10 years. It's, if United can fix them, then they're gonna fly them. The one we looked at in committee was the Airbus Neo 220. And I think that's the most logical next aircraft to come in here, but of course it can't come in here yet. But that's a newest generation, high bypass turbofan engines, which are quieter, more fuel efficient, and less polluting therefore. So I see that as the next fit, but that's in here today. I don't know in 7 or 8 years whether the Mitsubishi jet will come to fruition or the new Embraer jet will come to fruition. Right now they're still kind of paperweights on somebody's desk, but the Neo is something really, because the Mitsubishi, let's face it, was like 7 years ago they started talking about it, and they test flew a couple of them and then scuttled them. So if I'm looking at a crystal ball, I think it's the Airbus 220. But other than that, I don't have any other, I don't see
And that needs a wider runway.
a wider.
Runway than what we have.
Wingspan.
Yeah, it actually can land on a 100-foot wide runway. It just can't land here because of its wingspan, which has to be,
the
under
separation
nine.
is
We're
there.
still kind of constricted by that 90-foot
Yeah.
wingspan limitation.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Michael, any final thoughts for our consideration?
Yeah, just in closing, I'm looking at this, and this is the largest project that the county is ever going to embark on. Last price was $350 million. We get one shot at this. I'm not touting my own horn. I think I have a unique background and experience, but I would very much love to be involved in it. I have the time. I think I have the ability. And we get one shot, so I just hope that we do it right and do that right collectively. So thank you, and thank you for giving me the time
thanks.
today.
It was really nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you. All right, colleagues, so that is the end of our scheduled interviews for today. We will resume at 9:30 on Friday with our next bunch. And then we have scheduled discussion at noon on Friday to see if we are able to select our 7 regular members and 2 alternates, or if we need to figure out a way to score our interviewees and compare notes and make a decision at a future time. Yes, Patty?
I just have to commend the board, all of us. I'm going to bring me in on that. For these first interviews, we have great candidates. I mean, just sitting down and listening to their diverse interests and their diverse knowledge, and this are diverse personalities. You can just because I think it's really important for us to look at this group as a working group, this advisory committee. How will all the members be able to express themselves, be recognized for their differences, and in a manner in which people continue to want to contribute their diverse opinions. I think that's a key issue. I think that's what I personally want to see out of this advisory board is people who will present those different aspects. And so far, it's. I mean, I've got some people, leading the list, but now I'm really confused. I thought I just think the fact that we all agreed on these first 15 to move forward is exceptional for us to take 74 and end up with the cream of the crop. Or, I mean, there's still a lot of other options for other members that we haven't or will not interview to be part of other advisory, subgroups that we are going to probably want to bring in. So.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. So can the people who don't make it through this cut, will they have other opportunities for being involved or contributing?
I would understand so. Rich, if you want to come up and,
I think that's part of the plan.
Yes, thank you, Board. Rich Engelhardt, Deputy County Manager. There was a lot of conversation about opportunities. We had 74 applicants, all very good, capable people to be on the board. What was effective for us during the ASC visioning process is that we would go out and we would hire, we'd bring in experts, so-called subject matter experts. And I believe you've got that same opportunity here. So as a Board of Commissioners, there may be a specific topic that really needs to have a focus on it. And I think this committee could reach out to some of those individuals and help recommend some names for you all to take on some special projects. So, yeah, I do. I believe there's all kinds of opportunities.
Okay.
great, thank you.
And
bet.
also, how long do we expect the Airport Advisory Board to be working?
Perpetuity at this point.
Forever?
It's definitely a board discussion or a decision, but yeah, I think once you establish this, I see it going on for quite some time. I mean, we're talking, a 15, 18, 20-year project getting through everything, so.
And when are we, do we have a expected time of, okay, we would like a report from you so that we can actually break ground at some point?
Well, again, I think the first aspect of this, and Dan and I were just talking about that, sitting down with this new board and doing some education side of it, it really does hinge on getting an ALP put in place, coming up with the priorities and the funding. But I think we're ready to start doing some work on it. We'll get this board in place, and so I'm hoping they're going to come to you with some advice on some priorities, and it'll be your decision whenever you put a shovel in the ground. But I see this happening within the next 3 to 4 years. I really do hope that.
And if
we're
we
gonna
put
turn
in a
some
new plan with the FAA, how long does it take to get it back?
That would be a Dan question.
Let me see, that's the federal government. Let's see.
A month? Oh, that's all?
And then it will depend on the level of agreement that the FAA has with the plan that we submit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is good. And I think the
All right.
setup was great. Kelly did it. It ran really well. Appreciate that.
Good job. Nice job.
Thank you all. You came with great questions. I'm really impressed with our group here. And we'll reconvene Friday at 9:30. All right, okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Grassroots.
Okay.
Bye, Mike.